Don't come back here again, you failure! We beg you, please forgive us. Let your family in.
I told you already, my father said, throwing a file across the table. Honest people stay poor. I stared at him quietly. I'm not helping you cheat investors. Richard Carter leaned back in his chair and laughed coldly. Then stop calling yourself my son. Jason smirked from the couch. Dad, don't waste your breath. Ethan still thinks hard work matters. It does matter, I said. Jason lifted his glass. Not when you're broke. I wanted to argue, but I was tired. Every conversation inside that mansion felt like a courtroom where I was always guilty. My sister Chloe walked past me near the stairs. She looked at my old jacket and sighed. You seriously wore that tonight? It's clean, I answered. It's embarrassing. Her words hurt more because she did not even sound angry. She sounded ashamed. That night was my mother Evelyn's birthday dinner. Expensive cars filled the driveway while rich guests laughed loudly downstairs. I stood near the entrance holding a small wrapped photo frame of our family from years ago, back when we still smiled together. Jason noticed the gift first. That tiny thing is Mom's present? He asked. It means something, I said quietly. Jason burst out laughing. You came to a millionaire party with a dollar store gift? Several guests turned toward me. I felt heat rising into my face. My mother forced a nervous smile. Ethan, maybe you should have brought something else. It's personal, I replied. Richard grabbed the frame from my hands and looked at it like garbage. Personal doesn't build respect. One of the guests chuckled awkwardly. Jason pointed toward me. You know what his car is worth? Probably less than my watch. The room exploded with laughter. I clenched my fists. I came here for Mom. No, Richard snapped. You came here hoping this family would keep carrying you. I never asked for your money. You asked for our name, Jason said. That's worse. I looked at my mother desperately. Mom? She avoided my eyes and sipped her wine silently. Something inside me cracked. I worked every job I could find, I said. I stayed honest. I stayed loyal. Richard stepped closer. And where did that get you? At least I can sleep at night. He slammed his hand against the table. Enough. The entire room went silent. You are weak, he growled. You refused this family's business, refused our opportunities, and refused to become useful. I refused to become corrupt. Jason laughed again. Listen to him acting like some hero. Richard pointed toward the front door. Get out. I froze. What? You heard me. Leave this house and don't come back. Dad. You're not a Carter anymore, Jason interrupted. You're an embarrassment. Nobody defended me. Not Chloe. Not my mother. Nobody. I grabbed my small bag near the stairs while guests whispered behind me. Rain crashed outside as thunder shook the windows. Before opening the door, I looked back one final time. I still love this family, I said. Richard turned away without answering. I stepped outside into the cold rain, completely alone. Then I heard my mother's quiet voice behind me. Maybe he was born into the wrong family. Those words destroyed whatever was left inside me. For the first time in my life, I stopped believing I belonged anywhere. 3 weeks after leaving my family's mansion, I was sleeping inside my old car behind a grocery store parking lot. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered quietly. Hello? A man laughed on the other side. Hey, Ethan, heard you're living like a bum now. I immediately recognized Jason's friend, Trevor. What do you want? Jason said you got kicked out for stealing money. That's a lie. Sure it is, he mocked before hanging up. I stared at the dark ceiling of my car and felt my chest tighten. My own brother was destroying my name just to make himself feel powerful. The next morning, I walked into another job interview wearing the same wrinkled shirt. The manager looked uncomfortable the second he saw my name. You're Ethan Carter? Yes. He closed my resume slowly. I heard things. I can explain. There's nothing to explain. We can't hire you. Because of rumors? He avoided my eyes. I'm sorry. I walked out silently. By the end of the week, my savings were almost gone. Gas, cheap food, and parking tickets had drained everything. One freezing night, I parked near an old garage at the edge of town. Rain tapped against my windows while cold air slipped through the broken heater. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep, when somebody knocked on the glass. I jumped. An older man with gray hair pointed at me. You planning to freeze to death in there? I'm fine. You don't look fine. I said I'm okay. He crossed his arms. Then why are your hands shaking? I stayed quiet. The man sighed. Come inside before you die and make paperwork for me. I followed him into the garage carefully. The room smelled like oil and metal, but it was warm. He handed me coffee. Name's Marcus Hale. Ethan. You homeless? Temporarily. Marcus smirked slightly. That means yes. I expected judgment, but it never came. Instead, he pushed a sandwich toward me. Eat. I don't have money. I didn't ask for any. That sentence almost broke me emotionally. Nobody had shown me kindness in weeks. Marcus leaned against the counter. You know anything about cars? A little. Good. I need help tomorrow. You're offering me work? I'm offering you a chance. Don't waste it. The next morning, I started cleaning tools and helping customers. Around noon, a girl carrying coffee cups walked into the garage diner entrance nearby. She looked at me curiously. You're new. Yeah. I'm Sophia, she said. You look exhausted. Long month. She handed me a cup. Free coffee. I can't keep accepting free things. Sophia smiled softly. Maybe people help you because they want to. I did not know how to answer that. Later that evening, Marcus tossed me a towel. You work harder than most people twice your age. I need this job. You need confidence more. A few days later, Sophia sat beside me during lunch. You know, she said quietly, people who hurt others usually hate themselves first. I looked at her carefully. What makes you say that? The saddest people always try hardest to make others feel small. Jason's face instantly appeared in my mind. Weeks slowly passed. I learned repairs, invoices, customer service, and business basics from Marcus. But every night inside my car, I repeated the same promise silently. One day, my family would regret abandoning me completely. One afternoon, I found Marcus sitting alone in his office staring at unpaid bills. You okay? I asked. He quickly closed the folder. Fine. You don't look fine. Marcus sighed heavily. This garage might be gone in 2 months. My stomach tightened. What happened? A construction company bought half this block. He rubbed his forehead. Now they're claiming I missed old property tax payments. That doesn't sound legal. It isn't. He tossed several papers across the desk. But rich people usually win anyway. I sat beside him and started reading the documents carefully. Then I froze. The company logo on one contract made my chest burn. Carter Holdings. My father's company. Marcus noticed my expression immediately. You know them? That's my family. He looked uncomfortable. Kid, if this is too personal. No, I interrupted. Let me see everything. For the next several hours, I organized receipts, contracts, and payment records across the desk. Finally, I pointed at one page. This date was changed. Marcus frowned. What? Look here. The original tax payment was processed, but somebody edited the county filing afterward. You're serious? Yes. Marcus stared at me silently. You're smarter than you think, Ethan. I laughed bitterly. My family never thought so. The next day, Marcus drove me to a small law office downtown. A tall man opened the door wearing glasses and a tired expression. Marcus, he said, shaking his hand. Who's the kid? I'm Ethan Carter. The lawyer's face instantly hardened. Carter? I know how that sounds. You're Richard Carter's son? Yes. He crossed his arms. Your family buried 3 honest businesses in the city. I'm not like them. That's convenient. Marcus stepped forward. Daniel, just look at the evidence first. Daniel Brooks reluctantly reviewed the paperwork while I explained everything. After 20 minutes, he leaned back slowly. This is fraud, he admitted. So you'll help us? I asked. Daniel studied me carefully. Why would you go against your own family? Because they deserve it. No, he replied calmly. That's anger talking. I stayed quiet. Daniel closed the folder. Good cases aren't won by revenge. They're won by patience. Weeks turned into months. I worked mornings at the garage and evenings helping Daniel prepare legal documents. One night, Sophia found me asleep over paperwork at the diner. She touched my shoulder gently. You need rest. I need this case to win. You can barely keep your eyes open. I looked down. If Marcus loses this place, it's my fault. Why? Because my family started this. Sophia sat across from me quietly. You still blame yourself for their choices. You didn't hear what they said to me. I don't need to. Her voice softened. I see what it did to you. For the first time in years, somebody actually understood my pain without judging me. A month later, Daniel called us into his office. We won. Marcus blinked. What? The court ruled in our favor. Carter Holdings must pay damages for fraudulent filings. I could barely breathe. How much? Daniel smiled slightly. Enough to save the garage several times over. Marcus grabbed my shoulder tightly. You did this. No, I said emotionally. We did. A week later, Marcus invited me to dinner after work. "I've been thinking," he said. "That usually scares me." He laughed. "I'm serious. I don't want to run this place forever." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I trust you." I stared at him silently. Marcus slid business papers across the table. "I want us to build an automotive company together." My hands trembled slightly. "You'd make me your partner? You earned it." For the first time since leaving my family's mansion, I finally felt something stronger than shame. Hope. But deep inside, one painful question still refused to disappear. Why was I never enough for my own family? 3 years changed everything. I stood beside the glass windows of my mansion overlooking the city while Marcus laughed behind me. "Not bad for a homeless mechanic," he said. I smirked. "You mean homeless assistant mechanic?" Sophia walked into the room carrying coffee. "Both of you still smell like engine oil." "That smell built this house," Marcus replied proudly. I looked around quietly. The mansion sat on top of a hill above the same streets where I once slept inside my freezing car. Our automotive company had become one of the fastest-growing luxury brands in the state. Interviews, magazine covers, and business articles suddenly made my face recognizable everywhere. But success felt strange. Sometimes I still woke up expecting rain hitting my car windows. Sophia noticed my expression. "You're thinking again." "I keep waiting for everything to disappear." She stepped closer. "You built this life honestly. Nobody can take that away." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed nonstop. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Popular today?" I checked the screen. 20 missed calls. Most came from unknown numbers. One name stopped me cold, Chloe. I had not heard from my sister in 3 years. "What happened?" Sophia asked. "I don't know." A loud voice suddenly came through the security speaker near the gate. "Ethan. Please." I froze. Chloe stood outside the mansion gates crying. I walked downstairs slowly while security waited nearby. The moment the gates opened, Chloe looked at me like she had seen a ghost. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This place is yours?" "Yes." She stared at the mansion silently. "People online said you were rich now, but..." I didn't believe it. I crossed my arms. "Why are you here?" Her eyes filled with tears again. "Everything is falling apart." "What does that mean?" "Dad's company is collapsing." My chest tightened slightly, but I stayed calm. "How?" "Jason made terrible investments." Her voice shook. "Millions disappeared." I looked away toward the city lights. Chloe stepped closer desperately. "Dad's under investigation too." "For fraud?" She lowered her head. "Yes." Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. Instead, I only felt tired. "You ignored my calls for years," I said quietly. "I know. You acted ashamed of me." "I was wrong." "You laughed when they humiliated me." Her face crumbled emotionally. "I know, Ethan." Silence filled the cold air between us. Finally, she whispered, "Please help us." I almost laughed from disbelief. 3 years earlier, nobody helped me when I slept hungry inside my car. Now the same family wanted saving. Sophia opened the front door behind me. "It's freezing outside." I looked at Chloe carefully. For the first time in our lives, she looked weak while I held all the power. "Come inside," I said finally. Chloe walked through the mansion slowly, staring at everything around her. "This house is bigger than Dad's," she whispered. Marcus appeared near the stairs. "You okay, kid?" My sister needed somewhere warm. Marcus nodded once and quietly walked away. Chloe looked at family photos hanging beside company awards. "You really built all this?" "Yes." "Without us?" I met her eyes coldly. "I had no choice." She sat down slowly. "Dad won't admit it, but he's terrified." "That's new." "He keeps talking about you." I frowned. "Why?" "Because you became everything Jason was supposed to be." Her words hit harder than I expected. For years, I begged my family to see value in me. Now they finally did. But only after they needed something from me. "I think you should go," Chloe said softly while standing inside my office. I kept signing paperwork. "Why?" "Mom misses you." I looked up slowly. "She missed me while I was homeless too." Chloe lowered her eyes. "I know." She stayed silent when Dad threw me away. "She regrets it." I leaned back in my chair. Regret is easy when consequences finally appear. Chloe stepped closer carefully. "Please, Ethan. Just one dinner." After several long seconds, I finally answered. "Fine." The next evening, I parked outside my parents' mansion wearing a black tailored suit worth more than my old car ever cost. A servant opened the door immediately. The moment I entered, silence spread across the room. Jason stared at my watch first. Then my suit. Then my car keys. His jaw tightened instantly. Well, he muttered, look who suddenly became successful. I ignored him. My mother rushed toward me with tears in her eyes. Ethan. She hugged me tightly. I prayed every night for your return, she whispered emotionally. I stood still in her arms. Because all I could remember was her silence during the night I got thrown out. Richard walked downstairs slowly. For the first time in my life, my father looked nervous around me. You look well, he said carefully. I've been working. He nodded awkwardly. I always knew you had potential. Jason laughed loudly. That's funny. Nobody answered him. We sat down at the giant dining table where my humiliation first began years ago. But this time, everything felt different. The power had shifted. A servant poured wine while Richard forced a smile. I heard your company opened another factory. We did. That's impressive. Jason stabbed his food aggressively. You act like he built it alone. I never said that, Richard replied sharply. I almost smiled. Now they were turning against each other. My mother touched my hand gently. Are you seeing someone? Yes. What's her name? Sophia. She must be special. She stayed beside me when I had nothing. Jason rolled his eyes. Probably dating you for money now. I looked at him coldly. Careful. He smirked. Still sensitive? Still insecure? I shot back. The room became tense immediately. Richard cleared his throat. Let's stay calm tonight. Jason laughed bitterly. Of course. We all have to worship Ethan now. Nobody asked you to, Chloe snapped suddenly. Jason stared at her in disbelief. You're taking his side? I'm taking the side of the only honest person in this family. Richard slammed his fork down. Enough. Silence filled the room again. Then Jason looked directly at me. So tell us, he said mockingly. How's life with your little mechanic friend? I frowned. Marcus? Yeah. That garage trash. Something inside me exploded. I stood up so fast my chair crashed backward. Don't talk about him like that. Jason smirked. Why? Because he replaced Dad? He treated me better than any of you ever did. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I pointed at all of them with shaking hands. You threw me away like garbage. My mother started crying quietly. I slept inside my car for weeks, I continued. I couldn't even buy food sometimes. Richard looked stunned. What? You didn't know because none of you cared enough to ask. Jason's confidence finally faded. I stared directly at him. And while I was starving, you spread rumors that I was a drunk. That's not. Don't lie. The room became completely silent. My voice shook with years of pain. I begged this family to love me. I kept trying harder and harder while all of you treated me like a failure because I refused to become corrupt. My mother covered her face crying. Chloe looked broken. Even Richard seemed ashamed. Then, after several painful seconds, my father finally spoke. We made mistakes. I laughed bitterly. Mistakes? Richard swallowed hard. The company is struggling badly. There it was. The real reason for this dinner. He folded his hands together carefully. We need financial help. I stared at him silently. A loan from you could save the business, he continued quietly. Everything suddenly became clear. They did not invite me because they loved me. They invited me because they needed access to my money. And somehow, that realization hurt even more than being abandoned. After the dinner, my phone never stopped ringing. Most calls came from my mother. Please answer, her voicemail said one night. I just want to see you. I deleted the message without replying. 2 minutes later, another call appeared. Mom. Sophia looked at me from the kitchen. You're shaking. I'm fine. No, you're angry. I threw the phone onto the couch. Why now? Why suddenly care now? Sophia stayed calm. Because people panic when they finally lose something valuable. The next morning, Chloe visited my office secretly. She closed the door quickly behind her. We need to talk privately. What happened? She looked nervous. Jason's been stealing from the company. I stared at her carefully. How much? I don't know exactly. You're serious? Yes. She sat down heavily. Dad refuses to believe it. That sounds like him. He thinks Jason would never betray the family. I almost laughed bitterly. Jason betrays everybody. Chloe pulled out printed bank records from her bag. I copied these before anyone noticed. I reviewed the papers silently. Millions were missing. Luxury purchases. Hidden transfers. Fake investments. My stomach tightened. He's draining the company, I said quietly. Chloe nodded slowly. And now he's blaming you. That evening, Marcus walked into my office holding his tablet. You made the news again. I frowned. What now? Marcus showed me an interview clip of Jason speaking outside the Carter Company building. He abandoned his family during hard times, Jason told reporters dramatically. I guess money changed him. I laughed in disbelief. Unbelievable. Marcus crossed his arms. You want me to respond publicly? No. Why not? Because arguing with Jason is like wrestling smoke. Marcus smirked slightly. That's strangely poetic. Later that night, my mother finally appeared outside my mansion unexpectedly. I opened the door carefully. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. You really live here? Yes. She looked around sadly. It's beautiful. What do you want, Mom? I wanted to apologize properly. I stayed silent. I failed you, she whispered. I should have defended you years ago. You should have. Tears rolled down her face instantly. I was afraid of your father. And I was afraid of losing my family. She looked shattered hearing that. I miss you, she whispered. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Because part of me still missed them too. Not the real family. Just the version I always wished existed. After she left, Sophia sat beside me quietly near the fireplace. You still want their love, she said softly. I hate that you're right. There's nothing wrong with wanting family. There is when they destroy you. Sophia touched my hand gently. Just don't let loneliness blind you again. A week later, Richard finally called me himself. Jason stole company funds, he admitted heavily. You didn't believe me before. I know. What happens now? I don't know anymore. For the first time in my life, my father sounded weak. Meanwhile, Jason became more reckless every day. He blamed me publicly, blamed Chloe privately, and screamed at employees constantly. The Carter family was collapsing from the inside. And strangely, watching it happen did not feel satisfying. It felt tragic. One evening, I stood alone on my balcony staring at the city lights below. For years, I thought revenge would heal me. But as my family destroyed itself piece by piece, I realized something painful. Their suffering could not erase mine. And deep down, I still did not know how to stop feeling broken. My phone rang at almost midnight. I answered half asleep. Hello? Ethan. Chloe screamed through tears. Please come. I instantly sat upright. What happened? It's Jason. My chest tightened. Slow down. He crashed his car into the company building. What? There was a fight with Dad and she started crying harder. The building is on fire. I grabbed my jacket immediately. Where's Dad? I can't find him. The line disconnected. I rushed downstairs while Sophia followed me. What happened? She asked urgently. The Carter building caught fire. Her eyes widened. Oh my God. I have to go. Ethan, she said carefully, be careful. I drove through the city faster than I ever had before. Smoke already covered the sky when I arrived downtown. Police cars. Fire trucks. Crowds everywhere. The Carter headquarters burned like a giant torch against the night. Chloe ran toward me crying hysterically. Dad's still inside. Where? His office. A firefighter grabbed my arm immediately. Sir, you can't go near the building. My father's inside. It's too dangerous. I looked through the broken glass entrance and saw flames spreading across the lobby. Then I heard somebody screaming upstairs. Without thinking, I pulled away from the firefighter. Ethan! Chloe yelled. I ran inside. Heat slammed into me instantly. Smoke burned my throat while alarms screamed through the building. Dad! I shouted. No answer. I climbed the stairs quickly while fire spread across the hallway walls. Finally, I reached Richard's office. He was trapped beneath part of a collapsed bookshelf. His face turned pale when he saw me. Ethan? I dropped beside him immediately. Can you move? My leg. Flames crackled nearby. We need to go now. Richard grabbed my arm weakly. Why did you come back? I looked directly at him. Because you're still my father. For several painful seconds, he just stared at me. Then his eyes filled with tears. The first tears I had ever seen from him. I'm sorry, he whispered brokenly. Save your strength. No, his voice shook badly. I spent years trying to turn you into someone you were never supposed to be. Smoke thickened around us. We need to move. I was wrong about you. I forced the bookshelf off him with all my strength. Richard cried out painfully. Then I pulled his arm across my shoulders and dragged him toward the hallway. Everything around us burned. Part of the ceiling collapsed behind us loudly. We're not going to make it, Richard coughed. Yes, we are. By the time we reached the lobby, firefighters rushed toward us immediately. Chloe burst into tears seeing Richard alive. Oh my God. Paramedics carried him onto a stretcher while reporters swarmed outside the barricades. One police officer approached me afterward. Are you Ethan Carter? Yes. We arrested Jason Carter near the scene. I closed my eyes briefly. What charges? Fraud investigations were already active, he explained. Now there's drunk driving and property destruction too. Across the street, I saw Jason sitting inside a police car screaming angrily at officers. This is Ethan's fault, he shouted wildly. He ruined this family. Nobody listened anymore. By morning, every news station covered the story nonstop. The mighty Carter empire had collapsed publicly overnight. Videos of Jason's arrest spread everywhere online. Reporters called him reckless, corrupt, dangerous. Meanwhile, Richard suffered a heart attack hours later inside the hospital from stress and smoke inhalation. When Chloe told me, her voice sounded empty. I think everything's finally over, she whispered. I looked through the hospital window at my unconscious father connected to machines. For years, I imagined revenge would feel victorious. But standing there watching my broken family collapse completely, I only felt sadness. The Carter name once controlled the city. Now it had become a public tragedy. And somehow, despite everything, part of me still wished things had ended differently. People kept congratulating me after the Carter company collapsed. You finally won, Marcus said one afternoon. I stared out my office window quietly. Doesn't feel like it. Jason sat in prison awaiting trial. Reporters destroyed his reputation daily. The company was bankrupt. Everything my father built had fallen apart. Yet I felt exhausted instead of satisfied. A few days later, I visited Richard at the hospital alone. He looked older than I remembered. We sat in silence for almost a minute before he finally spoke. I used to think money solved everything. I stayed quiet. Richard looked down at his weak hands. I treated power like love. His voice sounded smaller than ever before. I thought making this family strong meant making everyone ruthless. You made everyone afraid, I answered softly. He nodded painfully. I know. For the first time in my life, there was no anger in his eyes. Only regret. I destroyed my own family, he whispered. Part of me wanted to blame him forever. Another part only felt sad watching him broken inside a hospital bed. Later that evening, my mother asked me to walk with her outside the hospital. Cold wind moved through the empty parking lot while she held her coat tightly. I need to tell you something honestly, she said quietly. I waited silently. I stayed silent all those years because I feared your father more than I loved you. Her confession hit me harder than I expected. Not because I did not know it already. Because hearing it out loud made it real forever. Tears filled her eyes instantly. I failed you. I looked away toward the dark streetlights. When Dad threw me out, I said slowly, I kept waiting for you to stop him. She covered her mouth crying. But you never did. I was weak. No, I answered painfully. You were scared. She nodded while tears rolled down her face. Back at my mansion later that night, I sat alone beside the fireplace until Sophia joined me quietly. You look tired, she said softly. I thought revenge would heal me. And it didn't. Sophia sat beside me carefully. Because revenge only proves somebody hurt you. It doesn't repair the damage. I stared into the fire silently. Then she touched my hand gently and said the words that changed everything inside me. Winning means nothing if you stay broken forever. I closed my eyes slowly. For years, I chased success because I wanted my family to finally accept me. Not fear me. Not need me. Accept me. And maybe that was the real tragedy. Even after everything I achieved, part of me was still that abandoned son standing in the rain begging his family to love him back. But for the first time, I finally understood something important. Healing would never come from destroying them. It had to come from saving myself first. Months passed before I invited my family to my mansion again. This time felt different. Nobody arrived acting powerful anymore. Richard walked slowly with a cane beside my mother. The strongest man I once knew now looked fragile and tired. Chloe arrived carrying homemade food instead of designer bags. Jason was absent. Still sitting in prison waiting for trial. Sophia opened the dining room doors while Marcus quietly poured drinks nearby. This house still amazes me, Chloe admitted softly. I nodded politely. Sit down. Dinner started peacefully at first. My mother looked around carefully. You built a beautiful life here. Thank you. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. The city still talks about your company constantly. I stayed calm. Business is going well. He nodded once. Good. Silence followed. Years ago, silence inside family dinners felt cruel. Now it felt nervous. Chloe finally spoke quietly. I started volunteering downtown. I looked surprised. Really? She nodded. At a shelter. That's good. I met people sleeping inside cars, she admitted painfully. It made me think about you. I appreciated the honesty even though it hurt. My mother wiped her eyes softly. We all think about that. Marcus glanced toward me carefully but stayed quiet. Then Richard suddenly leaned forward. You should consider expanding internationally, he said automatically. If you restructure the company properly. I immediately interrupted him. No. The table fell silent. Richard blinked. What? You don't control conversations in this house. His expression shifted with surprise. I stayed calm but firm. That was always the problem. Nobody moved. I looked at all of them carefully. If we're going to have a relationship, things change now. My mother lowered her eyes silently. Richard sat back slowly. I continued speaking. The rules here are honesty, respect, and accountability. Chloe nodded slightly. I looked directly at my father. Money will never buy a place in my life again. Richard swallowed hard but listened quietly. You spent years treating people like investments, I continued. Useful when profitable. Disposable when inconvenient. My mother started crying softly. I won't live like that anymore. Richard looked genuinely ashamed. You're right. I took a slow breath before continuing. If any of you want to stay part of my life, then change is people first. The room became completely silent. Not angry silent. Emotional silent. Because for the first time, they truly understood something important. I was no longer the weak son begging for acceptance. I no longer needed their approval to feel valuable. Chloe finally whispered, you became stronger than all of us. I looked at her quietly. No. I just stopped letting pain control me. Richard stared at me with tired eyes. I used to think strength meant power. And now? He glanced around the table slowly. Now I think strength means becoming kind after surviving cruelty. Nobody spoke for several seconds after that. Then Sophia gently placed her hand over mine beneath the table. And for the first time in my life, sitting with my family no longer made me feel small. Because this time, I finally understood my worth before walking into the room. I stood on my balcony beside Sophia while the morning sun slowly rose above the city. The streets below looked peaceful. 3 years earlier, I slept inside my freezing car somewhere down there wondering if my life was already over. Now people recognized my name everywhere. Successful. Respected. Powerful. But strangely, none of those words mattered as much anymore. Sophia leaned against me softly. You're thinking again. I used to dream about proving everyone wrong. And now? I smiled faintly. Now I just want peace. She kissed my cheek gently. That sounds healthier. Downstairs, Marcus was packing old files into boxes. You're really retiring? I asked while walking into my office. I'm old, he replied dramatically. You still fix engines faster than 20-year-olds. Marcus laughed. Maybe. But this company doesn't need me anymore. It always will. He shook his head. No, Ethan. It needs you. I stayed quiet. Marcus placed one final folder onto the desk. I always knew you'd build something bigger than revenge. I looked at him carefully. I almost didn't. But you did. He smiled proudly. That's why I'm proud of you. Those words meant more to me than any business award ever could. Later that afternoon, I visited Richard at his smaller new home outside the city. He opened the door slowly with his cane. You came. I said I would. We sat together quietly drinking coffee. No yelling. No pressure. No pretending. Just honesty for the first time in our lives. I started therapy, Richard admitted awkwardly. I looked surprised. Really? He nodded once. Turns out I spent most of my life confusing fear with respect. I almost smiled slightly. That sounds accurate. He accepted the comment without anger. I can't change the past, he said quietly. But I want to spend whatever time I have left becoming better. For once, I believed him. That evening, Chloe called me while leaving the homeless shelter downtown. We ran out of blankets again, she sighed tiredly. I'll send more tomorrow. Thanks. I smiled softly hearing children laughing behind her through the phone. Helping others had changed her. Painfully. Honestly. Jason, however, remained exactly the same. Every time someone mentioned him, the story sounded identical. He blamed the lawyers. The media. Me. The world. Everyone except himself. And finally, I understood something important. Karma is not always destruction. Sometimes karma is forcing people to face the truth about who they became. Some people grow from that truth. Others drown inside it forever. Late that night, I walked through my mansion slowly after everyone left. The giant rooms no longer felt cold or empty. They felt calm. Safe. Home. I stopped near the front doors and looked around one final time before turning off the lights. Then I realized why this house finally felt different. The broken version of me no longer lived inside it anymore. And for the first time in my entire life, I truly felt free.